darling, come here. Yes, right here, into this quiet corner, where the world finally stops asking things of you. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day slide off your back like an old coat you no longer need to wear. I know you're tired. I know the thoughts are still racing, all those conversations you should have had differently, all those emails waiting in the dark, all those small disappointments that somehow feel so heavy when you're alone in bed with the ceiling pressing down. You gave everything away today, didn't you? Every smile, every answer, every ounce of patience you had left. Your hands are tired. Your heart is tired. That ache behind your eyes, the one that never quite leaves anymore, it's allowed to soften now. There's no hurry tonight. No lists, no should-haves, no almost. Only the gentle rise and fall of your breathing, and my voice, soft as the blanket I'm tucking around you. You feel the weight still clinging to you, don't you? Like invisible stones in your pockets. Let them go, love, one by one. Let them fall through the mattress, through the floor, all the way down into the earth where they can't find you anymore. It's okay to rest now. No one is asking anything more of you tonight. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be ready. You don't have to have it all figured out by morning. Tomorrow is a guest that's been asked to wait politely on the doorstep. It won't come in without permission. Pull the covers higher. Let your eyes grow heavy. If tears come, let them. They're only the rain the sky has been saving for your healing. But tonight the lantern is lit for you, and it burns in a place you've almost forgotten, where someone keeps watch while you sleep. Tonight is the night of forgotten wishes. It happens only once every 7 years. On the longest night of winter, the night when the darkness is deepest and the stars lean closest to earth. On this night, every wish you ever made and thought went unheard. Every dream you whispered to birthday candles or shooting stars or dandelion clocks when you were small, they all return. They come back as glowing orbs of light, floating through the velvet dark, searching for the hands that released them, searching for you. And there is someone who gathers them, someone who has been collecting your lost wishes in glass jars for all these years, keeping them warm and safe until you were ready to remember. Can you feel it? The shift in the air? The way the room grows softer at the edges? That's the threshold opening, love. That's the door between the day you survived and the night that's been waiting to hold you. Listen. Do you hear it? Rain against windows, the distant cry of gulls, the creak of old wood settling in salt wind. You're not in your bed anymore, not quite. You're standing at the base of a lighthouse on the edge of the world, where a woman named Alara keeps watch over the dark sea. The door is open. Warm light spills across wet stone. Inside, there's a fire crackling low, and the air smells of chamomile, steam, wool socks drying by the hearth, pipe smoke, and sea salt. Alara is you, darling, and you are her, the you who has carried everything for so long, the you who forgot that the stars were singing. But tonight, oh, tonight, the star collector is coming up the lighthouse stairs with his lantern made of moon melt and mercy, and in his arms he carries glass jars full of light. Your light. Every wish you thought had died is coming home. You're safe now. You're seen. You're so deeply, unimaginably loved that entire galaxies leaned closer just to watch you breathe. Close your eyes, my brave heart. Let the story begin. It's all for you. Alara lived at the edge of the world, where the lighthouse stood like a white finger pointing at stars that had stopped speaking to her. She couldn't remember exactly when it happened, the silence. It had crept in slowly, the way fog rolls across the sea, until one night she looked up and realized the constellations had nothing left to say, or perhaps it was she who had nothing left to hear. The weight of it sat in her chest, like a smooth stone, not sharp enough to cut, but heavy enough to remind her with every breath that something precious had been lost. She was the lighthouse keeper now. Had been for 7 years, or was it 8? Time moved differently when you stopped counting summers by the number of fireflies you caught in your hands and started counting them by the bills that needed paying, the roof that needed mending, the endless small griefs of being a grown woman in a world that asked so much and gave back so little wonder. The lighthouse was beautiful in its way. Whitewashed stone that glowed silver under the moon. Windows that caught the last light of sunset and held it like honey in glass. A circular staircase that spiraled up and up toward the lantern room where the great light turned all night, warning ships away from the rocks, keeping strangers safe. But Alara kept no one safe anymore except the strangers, who never knew her name. You know this feeling, don't you? When the days became obligations and the nights became only the space between obligations. When you stopped looking up because looking up hurt too much. She had been a different kind of girl once. The kind who pressed her forehead against attic windows on clear nights, breath fogging the glass, whispering wishes to every star she could name. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Pleiades, the 7 sisters she pretended were her friends when she had none. She had believed, with the fierce certainty of childhood, that the stars were singing lullabies just for her, that if she listened hard enough, she could hear her name in the spaces between constellations. And she had heard it. She had, until she didn't anymore. It happened slowly, the way all quiet griefs do. First college, where staying up late meant cramming for exams instead of watching meteor showers. Then the job, the bills, the long gray years of doing what needed to be done. She grew taller, her bones settled into their adult shapes, her voice lost its question marks and gained periods. She learned to be responsible, reliable, reasonable. She forgot how to be enchanted. Now she climbed the lighthouse stairs every evening at dusk, her wool socks whispering against the stone, her thick cardigan wrapped tight against the salt wind that found every crack in the walls. She lit the great lamp. She checked the mechanisms. She made chamomile tea in a chipped mug and sat in the wooden chair by the window, watching the sea turn from gray to black, waiting for nothing in particular. The stars were still there, of course, the same stars. Orion still hunted across the winter sky. Cassiopeia still sat on her throne. But they were silent now, just cold points of light, indifferent as mathematics. That ache behind your ribs? It's allowed to soften tonight. Alara felt it most on the longest nights, when darkness pressed against the windows for so many hours that she almost forgot the sun existed. She would stand at the top of the lighthouse, hand against the glass, and remember being 7 years old, lying in summer grass, believing, truly believing that the universe knew her name. She wanted to believe again, but wanting wasn't enough. She had tried. She had stood outside on clear nights, tilted her face up, whispered please to the cold stars. But nothing answered. Nothing ever answered anymore. The magic had leaked out of her the way water leaks from a cracked jar, and she didn't know how to seal the cracks. So she stopped trying. She kept the lighthouse. She kept the strangers safe. She lived small and quiet and alone, and told herself this was enough. It was the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, the night when darkness held the world longest in its velvet hand before letting go. Alara had made her evening tea, chamomile with honey, the steam rising in lazy spirals that caught the lamplight. She wore her softest wool socks, the gray ones with a hole in the left heel she kept meaning to darn. Her cardigan was the color of fog, thick and warm, smelling faintly of the lavender sachet she kept in her dresser. The sea was unusually calm tonight. The waves whispered against the rocks rather than crashed. It was the kind of quiet that made her chest ache worse, because it left too much room for remembering. She stood at the window, mug warming her cold hands, and looked up. The stars were impossibly bright tonight, sharp as broken glass, beautiful in a way that hurt. "I used to hear you," she whispered to them, to Orion, to the Pleiades, to all the silent, glittering distance. "I used to hear you singing." The stars said nothing. They never did anymore. And that's when she saw it. The first star flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. You feel the weight lift from your shoulders now, don't you? Elara's breath caught. She set the mug down with shaking hands, pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watched, waited. The star flickered again. Not the random twinkle of atmospheric interference. She knew that pattern well enough. This was deliberate, rhythmic, like someone tapping on a window from very far away. And then, impossible, beautiful, terrifying, a light appeared at the base of the lighthouse. Not the harsh white of a flashlight or the yellow of a lantern. This light was different, soft, silver blue. It moved with the gentle bob of someone walking up a path, but it didn't illuminate the ground. It simply existed. A pocket of glow in the darkness, warm as breath on skin. Elara's heart did something strange in her chest, something it hadn't done in years. It remembered hope. She turned from the window, moved to the door, her socks soundless on the stone stairs as she descended. Round and round the spiral, one hand trailing against the whitewashed wall, the other clutching the railing. Her breath came quick and shallow. The light outside grew brighter as she descended, spilling under the door, painting the threshold silver. She reached the heavy wooden door, put her hand on the iron handle, felt it warm under her palm as if someone on the other side had been holding it too, waiting for her to arrive. "Close your eyes now. Love, yes, just like that." She opened the door. The man standing there was made of starlight and kindness. That was Elara's first thought, nonsensical as it was. He wasn't young or old. He existed somewhere outside of age, the way the moon exists outside of time. His clothes were simple. A long coat the color of midnight, soft as velvet, that moved in a wind she couldn't feel. His hair was silver white, but not with age, with light, as if he'd spent so long near stars they'd left their glow in him. But it was his eyes that made Elara's throat close with something between tears and recognition. They were kind, impossibly, devastatingly kind. The kind of kind that sees everything broken in you and loves you more for it. In his left hand, he carried a lantern. Not oil or electric, but something older. The glass was frosted and etched with constellations, and inside burned a flame that shifted colors like northern lights, blue to silver to the softest gold. In his right hand, he held a glass jar, and in the jar, Elara gasped. Light. Living light. It swirled and pulsed inside the glass like a tiny galaxy, leaving trails of silver blue as it moved. And as she stared, she could have sworn she heard it humming, a sound so faint it might have been her imagination, a lullaby she'd forgotten she knew. "Hello, Elara," the star collector said, and his voice was the exact warmth of the tea she'd left cooling upstairs. "I've been keeping this safe for you." He held out the jar. "I don't." Her voice cracked. She tried again. "I don't understand." "You made a wish," he said gently. "When you were 7 years old, you were lying in summer grass, and you wished that the stars would always sing you to sleep. Do you remember? Do you hear it?" That's your name, darling, being sung by the sky itself. She did. Oh, she did. The memory crashed over her like a wave, the prickle of grass against her bare arms, the smell of honeysuckle in evening, her grandmother's porch light a warm square in the distance. She had been so small, so certain the universe was listening. I thought Elara's eyes burned. I thought it didn't come true. It did, the star collector said, and smiled. It was the saddest, gentlest smile she'd ever seen. But you stopped being quiet enough to hear the answer. That happens sometimes when people grow up. The world gets so loud it drowns out the music. He pressed the jar into her hands. It was warm, alive. The light inside pulsed against her palms like a heartbeat. Tonight is the night of forgotten wishes, he said softly. Every 7 years, on the longest night, I walk the places where the stars still remember names. I return what was lost. I remind tired souls that the universe never stopped singing. It was only waiting for them to remember how to listen. Elara looked down at the jar, at the living, swirling light, and she heard it faint but unmistakable. Her name, sung in a voice like starlight through water. I have more for you, the star collector said. Many more. Every wish you thought went unheard. But first, he lifted his lantern higher, and the light spilled warm across her face. First you have to climb. He gestured up. Elara followed his gaze, and there, impossible and beautiful, a silver ladder descended from the sky. Its rungs were made of moonlight and mist, anchored to nothing, leading up into the stars themselves. I'm too old for climbing, Elara whispered. But even as she said it, she felt something shift in her chest, the smooth stone of grief cracking. Just a little, just enough. No one is too old for wonder, the star collector said. You're only too tired. But tonight, darling, he smiled. Tonight, I've got you. He offered his hand, and Elara took it. The moment her fingers touched his, warmth flooded through her. Not heat, but warmth, the feeling of being tucked into bed as a child, of your mother's hand on your forehead checking for fever, of the sun on your face after a long winter. Every exhausted part of her sighed in recognition. That's it, the star collector murmured. You're so tired, aren't you? It's okay. I've got you. And he did. His hand was steady and sure, and when he guided her toward the silver ladder, she found her feet moving without fear. The first rung appeared solid under her wool sock, cool and humming, with some frequency she felt more than heard. Hold your jar carefully, he said. It's been waiting a very long time to come home. Elara cradled the glass against her chest with one hand, gripped the ladder with the other. The star collector climbed beside her, his lantern swinging gently, painting everything in that soft, shifting light. They rose. Up past the lighthouse windows, up past the beam of the great lamp still turning faithfully in the dark, up into the salt air and the vast black of the solstice sky. And as they climbed, the stars began to hum, softly at first, just a vibration in the air that might have been wind, but then louder, clearer, until Elara could hear distinct notes, harmonies, the rise and fall of a lullaby she'd been born knowing. Let the tears come if they need to, you're safe here, always. They're singing, she breathed. Tears spilled hot down her cold cheeks. They're really singing. They never stopped, the star collector said gently. You just forgot how to be still enough to hear them. Higher, higher still, until the lighthouse below was a toy, a white spire, topped with a winking golden eye, until the sea was black velvet scattered with moonlight, until there was nothing but stars in every direction, close enough to touch, singing her name in 1,000 different frequencies of love. The star collector stepped off the ladder onto nothing, or not nothing, something invisible but solid, like standing on glass over infinity. He helped Alara up beside him, and she gasped. They stood in the sky, stood among constellations. Orion's belt blazed to her left, so close she could feel its heat. The Pleiades clustered to her right like 7 blue sisters, humming in harmony. And everywhere, glass jars hung, suspended in the darkness, each one glowing with living light. "These are yours," the star collector said softly. "Every wish, every dream, every prayer you whispered to birthday candles and dandelion clocks and shooting stars. I've kept them all." Alara's legs gave out. She simply sat down in midair, which held her like a hand, and sobbed. Not sad tears, not quite happy ones either. Something deeper. The kind of crying that comes when something broken inside you finally begins to heal. The star collector sat beside her. He didn't speak, didn't tell her to stop. He simply sat, his lantern beside them, and let her cry while the stars sang lullabies. When she could breathe again, when the tears had slowed to quiet streams down her face, he spoke. Are you ready to remember who you were before you forgot?" Alara looked at him, at his kind, ageless face, at the jars full of light floating all around them like captured fireflies, at the vast, singing darkness that suddenly didn't feel dark at all. "Yes," she whispered. The star collector smiled. He stood, offered his hand again, pulled her gently to her feet. "Then let's collect your wishes, Alara, one by one. And I'll tell you the story of the girl who could hear constellations and how she never really stopped being that girl at all." He reached up and plucked a jar from the air. It chimed as he handed it to her, a sound like a music box winding up after years of silence. "This one," he said, his voice warm as honey and tea, "is from when you were 9 years old. You wished that someone somewhere was proud of you." He opened the lid, and the light poured out like liquid silver, warm and sweet, and wrapped around Alara's shoulders like a blanket made of the universe's love. "Feel how warm the starlight is against your cheek? That's pride. Sweet one, the universe is proud of you." She gasped, because she could feel it. The pride, the love, the unshakable certainty that she was seen, that she mattered, that she had always been exactly enough. "I kept it safe," the star collector whispered, "until you were ready to know it came true." Alara held the empty jar in shaking hands, and for the first time in so many years, she felt like a child again, but the good kind of child. The kind who believes in magic because magic is real. The kind who knows, with absolute certainty, that the stars know their name. "There are more," the star collector said gently, gesturing to the hundreds, no, thousands of jars hanging in the singing dark. "So many more. Shall we begin?" And Alara, still crying, still laughing, still hardly believing this was real. Alara nodded. The star collector moved through the suspended constellation of jars with the grace of someone who had walked among stars for longer than memory. Each jar he touched chimed softly, a different note, until the air around them hummed with the beginning of a symphony. "This one next," he said, reaching for a jar that glowed pale gold, like early morning sun through honey. "Do you remember your grandmother's house? The attic room where you used to hide when the world felt too big?" Alara nodded, her throat still tight from crying. She remembered the narrow stairs that creaked in a language only she understood, the slanted ceiling with water stains that looked like countries she would never visit, the round window that looked out over the garden where hollyhocks grew tall as her child self. You were 7, the star collector continued, his voice soft as the velvet darkness around them. It was raining. You could hear it on the roof, that particular sound rain makes on old shingles, like thousands of gentle fingers drumming. And you were lying on the floor, wrapped in the quilt your grandmother made, the one with the star pattern. And you wished, he paused, smiled, you wished that someday, when you were big and the world felt scary, you could come back to that exact moment and be small again. He handed her the jar. Ilara's hands shook as she took it. The glass was warm, almost hot, and the moment she touched it, she heard the rain. Not the memory of rain, actual rain, pattering on a roof that existed somewhere between here and then. Open it, the star collector whispered. Go home for a little while. She twisted the lid. It opened with a soft sigh, and the world shifted. Suddenly, Ilara was barefoot, and beneath her feet were wooden floorboards worn smooth by generations. The attic floorboards sighed in recognition when she stepped onto them, a creaking welcome that said, "We remember you, we've been waiting." The air smelled of dust and old books, and the lavender sachets her grandmother tucked into every corner. Rain drummed overhead, steady and sure, and through the round window she could see the garden, impossibly green, impossibly alive, hollyhocks nodding their pink heads in the downpour. The quilt was there, the star-pattern quilt, faded but soft, spread across the floor exactly where she'd left it 27 years ago. Ilara sank down onto it. The fabric welcomed her weight, wrapped around her like a hug, from hands that had been gone for 10 years now but somehow still knew exactly how to hold her. That ache behind your ribs? The star collector's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, gentle as the rain. It's allowed to soften tonight, and it did. The smooth stone of grief in her chest cracked a little wider, and something warm spilled out. Not sadness, though, there was sadness in it, but also relief. The relief of being small again, of having a place to hide that remembered you, of knowing that some things, some precious, perfect things couldn't be taken by time. She lay back on the quilt, staring up at the slanted ceiling with its water-stained countries. The rain sang on the shingles. Her bare feet were cool against the wood, and for the space of several long breaths, she was 7 years old again, and the world hadn't yet taught her that magic was imaginary. You can come back here, the star collector said softly, any time you need to. This moment belongs to you now. I'm giving it back. Ilara closed her eyes, let the rain wash over her in waves of sound, felt the quilt beneath her, smelled the lavender and dust, tasted the particular flavor of safety that only childhood hideaways possess. When she opened her eyes again, she was back among the stars, sitting in the velvet nothing and everything, the empty jar in her lap. But something had changed. She felt lighter, as if the ceiling had been higher all along, and she'd only just noticed. The star collector was waiting, patient as moonrise, his lantern casting gentle shadows across his kind face. "Ready for another?" he asked. She was. He reached for a jar that pulsed with soft green light, like fireflies on a summer night. Before he even opened it, Ilara felt something flutter in her chest, a memory of long grass and bare legs, and the particular magic of staying up past bedtime. "You were 8, the star collector said. It was the first week of summer vacation. Your parents thought you were asleep, but you'd climbed out your bedroom window onto the porch roof, and you sat there in your nightgown watching the fireflies in the backyard. There were hundreds of them. And you wished—" His smile was sad and sweet at once. "You wished someone could see you, really see you. the part of you that snuck out to watch the world when everyone else was sleeping. The jar trembled in his hands. He held it up to the starlight, and inside, Elara could see not just light, but shapes, tiny glowing insects, spiraling in lazy patterns. "Look," he whispered. She looked, and there, among the real stars that surrounded them, she saw it a single firefly, impossibly large or impossibly close, drifting toward her through the darkness. Its abdomen pulsed with cold green fire, on-off, on-off, a heartbeat made of light. It landed on her wrist. Elara froze, hardly breathed. The firefly walked across her skin on delicate legs, its light pulsing steady and slow. And then impossible, beautiful, it took flight again, circling her head in a slow spiral, and its light spelled out letters in the dark. Elly, her childhood nickname, the name only her grandmother had used, the name that died when her grandmother did. Elara made a sound, half laugh, half sob. The firefly circled once more, then landed on her shoulder, right at the curve where her neck met her collarbone, and stayed there, pulsing gently, a tiny warm weight, a living nightlight. "I see you," the star collector said quietly. "The universe sees you. Every secret moment, every time you stayed up to watch the world when you thought no one was looking. You were never invisible, Ellie, never. You're so tired, aren't you? But you don't have to carry the weight of being unseen anymore." The firefly on her shoulder pulsed 3 times, soft as a kiss, then lifted into the air. It flew in a lazy loop around the star collector's lantern, then joined the constellation of hanging jars, becoming part of the living light show that surrounded them. Elara touched her shoulder where it had rested. The warmth remained, soaking into her skin, down into her bones, being seen, being known, being remembered by something larger and kinder than she'd ever imagined. "There are more," the star collector said. "So many more. Every wish, every small magic you thought you imagined. They were all real, Ellie. Every single one." The next jar was the color of moonlight through water, pale silver blue, luminous and alive. When the star collector lifted it from the air, it chimed like a glass bell, and Elara felt something shift in her chest, a stirring, an opening. "This one is special," he said softly. "This is the wish you made when you were 10, lying on the grass after your first real heartbreak. Do you remember? The boy who said you were weird for talking to the stars? You wished that the stars would talk back, that someone out there would prove him wrong." He didn't hand her the jar. Instead, he opened it himself, and the light that poured out was liquid. It ran over his hands like water, like mercury, like melted moonlight, and it spilled up into the darkness above them. And Orion himself leaned down. "You hear it? That's your name, darling, being sung by the sky itself." The constellation bent like a giant made of stars, his belt bright as 3 suns, his sword glittering with nebula fire, and he sang, not in words, there were no words for this, but in frequencies that bypassed her ears entirely and went straight to the part of her that had never stopped being 10 years old and heartbroken and desperate to be understood. He sang her name, Ellie, Elara, every version of herself she'd ever been. He sang the shape of her loneliness, and in singing it, transformed it into something precious, something chosen. He sang her weird and strange and too much, and made those things sound like the highest compliments in the universe's vocabulary. Tears poured down Alara's face, hot and fast and good. the kind of crying that empties you out so something better can rush in. Uh, he was wrong, the star collector said quietly. The boy, and everyone else who ever made you feel like your magic was something to hide. They were all wrong. The stars have always been talking back, Ellie. They've been singing your name since before you were born. Orion straightened slowly, his song fading to a hum that vibrated in her ribs. But before he fully withdrew, he reached down a gesture made of impossible distances, made suddenly intimate, and touched her hair. Just once. Gentle as a father tucking a child into bed. A single strand of her hair lifted, floated, glowed. When it settled back against her head, it held starlight woven through it like thread. Comet dust, fine as silk, braided into the gray-brown strands. Ilara touched it with shaking fingers, felt the warmth, the proof, the physical evidence that this was real, that she wasn't imagining it, that the universe had reached down and touched her with hands made of ancient light. You'll keep that, the star collector said. When you wake up, if you think this is a dream, you'll find that strand in the mirror. And you'll remember. She nodded, unable to speak, unable to do anything but cry and laugh and shake, with the overwhelming relief of being told, after 34 years, that she wasn't crazy, that the magic had been real all along. Come, the star collector said, standing. He offered his hand again, and Ilara took it, let him pull her to her feet. The firefly still pulsed gently somewhere near her left ear. The strand of comet dust hair tickled her cheek. There's someone who wants to meet you. He led her through the Constellation forest because that's what it was, she realized. A forest made of light, with jars for fruit and starlight for leaves. The Pleiades clustered to their right, 7 blue sisters humming in tight harmony. Cassiopeia reclined in her throne of suns to the left, regal and warm. Everywhere, the darkness was alive with gentle light. They walked or floated or drifted. It was hard to tell the difference here until they reached a clearing in the stars. And there, hanging larger than all the others, was a jar that glowed with all the colors at once. Rainbow light swirled inside, painting everything around them in shifting hues. This wish, the star collector said, and his voice was different now, softer, more tender. This wish you made when you were 12. You were in your grandmother's garden, and she was dying. You knew she was dying, though no one had told you yet. And you wished, he paused, looked at Ilara with eyes full of love. You wished you could tell her goodbye properly, that you could have one more moment when she wasn't tired or sick or confused, just one more moment of her really truly seeing you. Ilara's breath stopped. The smooth stone of grief in her chest cracked wider, and this time the pain was sharp, good sharp, the kind of sharp that means something infected is finally being cleaned out. I can't, she whispered. She's gone. I can't. Open the jar, Ellie, the star collector said gently. Some wishes take longer to come true, but they all come true eventually. With shaking hands, Ilara reached for the jar. It was heavier than the others, solid and real in a way that made her chest ache. She twisted the lid. The rainbow light poured out, and her grandmother was there. Not a ghost, not a memory, but her, truly her, the way she'd been before the sickness, solid and warm and smelling of peppermint candies and hand lotion. Her grandmother stood in the star clearing, wearing her favorite cardigan, the yellow one with the wooden buttons, and smiled. Oh, my Ellie girl, she said. Look at you. Look at who you became. Ilara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stand there, frozen, as her grandmother stepped forward and cupped her face in warm, real hands. I'm so proud of you. Her grandmother whispered, "Do you hear me? So proud. You grew up kind. That's the hardest thing to do in this world, to grow up and stay kind. And you did it." "I miss you," Alara managed, her voice breaking. "I miss you so much. Every day." "I know, honey. I know." Her grandmother's thumbs brushed away tears. "But I'm not really gone. I'm in every star you look at, every firefly, every moment you choose gentleness when the world tells you to be hard. I've been watching Ellie, and I'll never stop watching." She pulled Alara into a hug, a real hug, warm and solid and smelling exactly right. Alara buried her face in her grandmother's shoulder and sobbed. Let herself be small. Let herself be held by hands that had been gone for 10 years but felt like they'd been holding her all along. "You're gonna be okay," her grandmother whispered into her hair. "You're gonna remember how to hear the stars again. You're gonna let yourself be loved. You're gonna stop being so lonely. I promise. The Star Collector will make sure of it." They stood like that, or floated, or existed in whatever space this was for a long time. Long enough for Alara's breathing to slow. Long enough for the crying to gentle into soft hiccups. Long enough for something in her chest to unlock that had been sealed shut since the funeral. When they finally pulled apart, her grandmother was already fading, becoming translucent, becoming light. "Wait." Alara reached for her. "I'm always here, Ellie girl," her grandmother said, smiling even as she dissolved. "In every constellation, in every gentle thing you do. I'm not leaving, I'm just becoming easier to find." And then she was gone, back into the jar, which sealed itself with a soft click. The rainbow light remained, though it hung in the air, around them like aurora, beautiful and impossible. The Star Collector put a hand on Alara's shoulder. "She's been waiting to tell you that. Some wishes need time, but yours was heard. She heard it. And she wanted you to know you did say goodbye properly." You were holding her hand. "You whispered that you loved her. She heard every word." Alara nodded, unable to speak. The tears kept coming, but they were different now. Softer, cleaner, like rain after a long drought. "Tomorrow can wait outside the window. Tonight belongs to the child you still are. The child who still needs to hear that she's loved, that she's remembered, that goodbye doesn't mean gone forever." The Star Collector gave her time. He didn't rush her. He simply stood beside her, his lantern glowing steady, while she cried herself empty and then, slowly, filled back up with something better, something like peace. When she could breathe again, he spoke. "There's more to collect. Are you ready?" She was, or she wasn't, but she nodded anyway. He led her deeper into the constellation forest, past the Pleiades who hummed blessings, past Cassiopeia who inclined her head in royal acknowledgement, past clusters of stars whose names she'd never learned but who sang to her anyway. They came to a place where the darkness was deeper, more concentrated. Here the jars hung in tight clusters, hundreds of them, all glowing with the same soft amber light. "These," the Star Collector said quietly, "are the hardest wishes to collect, the everyday ones, the small, constant wishes that you made so often they became background noise. The wish to matter, to be seen, to have your efforts recognized, to know that the work you do, the quiet, invisible work of just surviving and being kind, means something to someone." He gestured to the jars, and they all chimed at once, a cascade of sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Every dish you washed when you were too tired to stand, every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, Every morning you got out of bed, even though staying under the covers forever sounded easier. Every moment you chose kindness over bitterness, every single one. His voice caught, was seen, was counted, was treasured. He reached up and, with both hands, gathered an armful of jars. 20, 30, maybe more. He held them out to Alara. These are yours. You've earned them. Alara took them, cradled them against her chest. They were warm, so warm, and they hummed against her ribs like purring cats, like comfort made physical. Open them, the Star Collector whispered, all at once. She did. The lids unscrewed simultaneously, and light golden, honey-thick, impossibly gentle light poured out and over her. It soaked into her skin, into her hair, into her bones. It filled her lungs with warmth. It wrapped around her shoulders like a blanket made of every good thing she'd ever done and forgotten about. You are being held by more hands than you could ever count. Can you feel them? She could. Oh, she could. Hundreds of hands. Thousands of hands. All made of light. All holding her up. Supporting her. Telling her without words that she mattered. That her life meant something. That every small kindness had rippled out further than she could imagine. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Alara sank to her knees, or what passed for knees in this place, and let the light hold her, let herself be cradled by the accumulated weight of every good thing she'd ever done. It was overwhelming, beautiful. It felt like coming home to a house she'd never lived in but had always belonged to. The Star Collector knelt beside her. His hand was warm on her back. You are so loved, he said quietly, by more beings than you could count in 1,000 lifetimes. Every star, every constellation, every particle of light that ever touched your skin. They all love you, Ellie. They all see you. They're all so proud of who you've become. The tears came again, but she was laughing too. Laughing and crying at the same time, the way you do when something too big for your body finally finds its way out. The light faded slowly, reluctantly, sinking into her skin until she glowed from within. The jars were empty now, scattered around her like spent candles, but the warmth remained. She could feel it radiating from her bones. Stand up, the Star Collector said gently. There's something I want to show you. He helped her to her feet, and she realized she felt different, lighter. Not because anything had been taken away, but because she'd finally set down weights she hadn't realized she was carrying. They walked until they reached the edge of the Constellation forest. Beyond it stretched the most beautiful thing Alara had ever seen, a vast meadow made of soft darkness, and growing from it like flowers were thousands more jars, each one a different color, each one glowing with patient light. These are all the other wishes, the Star Collector said. The ones you haven't opened yet, the ones we'll collect together tonight, until you're full enough to sleep properly, until you really remember what it felt like to be a child who believed in magic. He reached down and plucked a jar that shone pale blue, like a robin's egg. This one is from when you were 9. You had just moved to a new town, no friends yet, and you built yourself a hiding place in the woods behind your house, a little fort made of sticks and old boards. You wished it would still be there when you were grown, that it would wait for you. He opened the jar, and suddenly Alara could smell it, the particular smell of woods in summer, of pine sap and moss, and the dusty warm scent of sun on old wood. She could feel bark under her palms, could hear leaves rustling overhead. Close your eyes, the Star Collector whispered. She did. When she opened them again, she was standing in those woods, not in memory, in reality. The trees were the same, taller, thicker, but the same. And there, almost hidden behind a screen of undergrowth. Her hiding place, 25 years old now, half collapsed, roof caved in, boards weathered to silver, but still there, still standing, still waiting. Elara walked to it on shaking legs, pushed aside the branches, touched the frame with reverent fingers. Someone had carved her initials there. E.M. Deeply cut, deliberate, her 9-year-old handwriting, preserved in wood. She traced the letters with her fingertip and felt something break open in her chest. Not grief this time. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The hiding place had waited. It had stayed. Some things, some precious, important things, didn't disappear when you stopped looking at them. I kept it for you. The star collector's voice came from everywhere. The wish kept it standing, even when the storms came, even when the woods grew wild. It stayed because you asked it to. Elara knelt in the soft dirt, pressed her forehead against the weathered wood, and laughed. Actually laughed. A real laugh. Surprised and watery and free. The sound made something happen. The darkness around them, the velvet night of the Constellation forest, suddenly bloomed with light. Hundreds of new stars ignited at once, tiny and bright, each one responding to the frequency of her joy. You laugh small, surprised, watery, and the sound makes an entire galaxy bloom. The star collector appeared beside her, his face alight with wonder. "Do you see?" he whispered. "Do you see what your happiness does? You think you're small. You think your joy doesn't matter. But look," he gestured up at the newly born stars. "Look what you just created." Elara looked up through tears and laughter. The stars were so beautiful, so impossibly, heartbreakingly beautiful, and they were hers, born from her laugh, from her choosing, even for a moment, to be happy. "You have that power," the star collector said softly. "You always have. Every time you choose joy, even small joy, even quiet joy, you create light. You make the universe a little brighter. You matter more than you know." They returned to the Constellation forest, or perhaps they'd never left. Space worked differently here, and the star collector led her to a place where the moon hung low and huge, close enough to touch. It wasn't the distant white disk she knew from Earth. Here it was alive, breathing, humming, with ancient power. "The moon keeps secrets," the star collector said. "Human secrets. The wishes whispered to her on countless nights by countless souls. And she remembers every lullaby ever sung under her light." He pulled out a jar that pulsed in rhythm with something deep and old. When he opened it, music spilled out a lullaby in a voice Elara knew. Her grandmother's voice, but not her grandmother as Elara had known her, her grandmother young, strong, singing to her own babies decades before Elara was born. The words were unfamiliar, maybe in another language, maybe in the language before language, but Elara's bones knew them, her blood knew them. This was the lullaby that had been sung to her grandmother, who sang it to Elara's mother, who hummed it without knowing why when Elara was born. The moon leaned closer, and her light fell across Elara like a blanket of silver. And then the moon herself hummed along the lullaby your grandmother forgot the words to, but your bones remember. The sound was older than mountains, older than oceans. It was the sound of every mother comforting every child since the beginning of time. It was safety made audible, love made into frequency. Elara felt herself growing smaller, younger, not shrinking exactly, but softening. The hard edges she'd grown, the armor of adulthood, melted away under the moon's light and lullaby until she was just herself, just Ellie, just a tired soul who needed to be sung to sleep. She lay down in the velvet nothing and everything, and the moon's light wrapped around her like the world's most perfect blanket. The lullaby continued, joined now by the constellations, by the firefly on her shoulder, by the star strand in her hair. Everything sang her to sleep, or almost to sleep, to that place just before sleep where everything feels safe and soft and possible. Rest now, the star collector whispered. Just for a moment. Let yourself be held. And she did. She let go. Let herself float in the darkness that wasn't dark at all, but full of gentle light. Let the lullaby wash over her in waves. Let the moon cradle her like the child she still was inside. When she stirred again, minutes or hours later, time had no meaning here. She felt changed. Not healed exactly, but healing. Like a bone that had been set properly and was finally beginning to knit back together. The star collector was sitting beside her, patient as starlight. Better? He asked. She nodded. Good, because there are still more wishes to collect. And some of them, he smiled, some of them are my favorites. He led her to a part of the constellation forest she hadn't seen before, where the jars hung in neat rows like books on shelves. Each one had words etched into the glass, not in any language she could read, but she understood them anyway. They were titles, memories, moments preserved like specimens in amber. The star collector ran his fingers along the jars, reading, until he found the one he wanted. It glowed soft white, like fresh snow under moonlight. This one, he said, is from the first snowfall of your 16th year. You were having a hard time, do you remember? Your parents were fighting more. School was suffocating. You felt trapped. And then it snowed, the first snow of winter, and you walked outside without a coat and just stood there, catching snowflakes on your tongue like you did when you were little. And you wished, he paused, looked at her. You wished you could stay in that moment forever, clean and cold and new. He opened the jar. Snow fell from nothing. Soft, silent, perfect snow, spiraling down through the velvet dark. It didn't melt when it touched Alara's skin. It dissolved into light instead, each flake a tiny burst of cold that tasted like hope and new beginnings. She tilted her face up, opened her mouth, caught snowflakes on her tongue. They tasted like her 16th year, like the specific flavor of believing things could still get better, like winter and wonder and the clean slate feeling of the world covered in white. You can have this, the star collector said, whenever you need it, the feeling of starting over, of being washed clean. It's yours to keep. The snow fell faster and covering everything in gentle white, her hair, her shoulders, the jars hanging all around them. The constellation forest became a winter wonderland, and Alara was 16, again standing in her driveway at midnight, tasting snowflakes and believing, just for a moment, that magic was real. When the snow faded, melting into light that soaked into her skin, she was glowing, literally glowing, a soft white radiance that made her look like she was carved from moonlight. You're collecting yourself, the star collector said softly, all the pieces you lost, all the moments you thought were gone. They were never gone, Ellie. I kept them safe, and now they're coming home. He showed her more. The jar that held the sound of her favorite teacher's voice saying she was proud of her, a moment Alara had forgotten but needed desperately to remember. The light poured into her ears like honey, warm and golden, and she heard it. I'm proud of you. You worked so hard. The jar that held the feeling of her cat purring on her chest when she was sick with flu at age 11, the particular weight and warmth and safety of being cared for by something small and furry. When it opened, that weight returned, settling over her heart, and she could swear she felt tiny paws kneading gently against her ribs. The jar that held the exact temperature and scent of her mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings, coffee and cinnamon rolls in safety. It spilled out as warmth and smell and the feeling of being small enough that other people took care of everything. She breathed it in deeply, let it fill her lungs, and for a moment she was 7 years old with bare feet on cold kitchen tile, watching her mother hum while she cooked. The jar that held her first successful poem, the one she'd written at 13 and immediately thrown away because she thought it was stupid, the star collector had saved it. He read it to her now in a voice full of reverence, and she heard, truly heard, how beautiful it was. How raw and honest and full of exactly the kind of hope that 13-year-olds possess before the world teaches them to be cynical. Each jar opened something in her. Each light that poured out filled a crack she hadn't known was there. She was being rebuilt, piece by luminous piece. Finally, when she was almost full, almost complete, the star collector led her to a single jar that hung apart from all the others. It was larger than the rest, and it pulsed with a deep purple light, like twilight before the first star appears. "This one," he said quietly, "I've been saving for last. This is the wish you made last week. Do you remember?" Alara thought back. Last week. What had she? Oh, last week she'd stood at the top of the lighthouse, looking out at the winter stars, feeling so tired and alone and forgotten that the loneliness was a physical ache in her bones, and she'd whispered to the silent stars, "Please, please, just let me know I'm not alone, that someone, somewhere, knows I exist." She'd cried that night, proper crying, the kind that leaves you hollow and aching. She'd thought the stars had ignored her, that her prayer had gone unheard into the cold vastness of space. But the star collector was holding the jar, holding the light of that wish, preserved and honored and answered. "You were heard," he said softly. "The moment you spoke those words, every star in the sky turned to look at you. Every constellation learned your name. The universe bent its attention toward you like a parent hearing their child cry. You were never alone, Ellie, not for a single second." He opened the jar, and the light that poured out was different from all the others. It was purple and gold and every color that has no name. It was thick and warm and alive. It poured over Alara like liquid love, like the accumulated attention of every star in the sky made manifest, and she felt them, all of them, billions of stars, watching her, knowing her, loving her. The weight of it should have been crushing. But it wasn't. It was lighter than air. It was the feeling of being held by more hands than you could count, of being seen by more eyes than exist in any human gathering, of being loved by something so vast and patient and eternal that your small human worries became beautiful instead of burdensome. Feel how warm the starlight is against your cheek? That's pride. Sweet one, the universe is proud of you. Alara collapsed into the light. Let it pour over her, through her, into every exhausted corner of her soul. She wept, but these tears were different. These tears were joy mixed with relief, mixed with the overwhelming gratitude of finally being answered. "You're not alone," the star collector whispered, his voice blending with the hum of stars. "You have never been alone. Every moment you thought no one was watching, we were watching. Every time you thought your life didn't matter, we were counting it as precious. Every prayer, every whisper, every desperate plea, we heard them all, and we loved you for every single one." The light continued to pour, and Alara let herself be filled to overflowing, let herself believe, maybe for the first time since childhood, that she was loved, that she mattered, that the universe itself knew her name and thought it beautiful. When the light finally faded, absorbed into her skin, her bones, her very atoms, Alara opened her eyes and found herself changed, not on the outside, but inside, where it counted. The smooth stone of grief was gone. In its place, something warm and alive pulsed gently. A star, she realized. The star collector had placed a star inside her chest, and it burned with steady, gentle light. "That's yours to keep," he said. "It will never go out, even on the darkest nights, when you feel alone again, because you will, sometimes. That's part of being human. You can put your hand over your heart and feel it burning, and you'll remember. You'll remember that you are loved, that you matter, that the universe knows your name." Alara pressed her hand to her chest, felt the warmth there, steady as a heartbeat, real, undeniable. "Thank you," she whispered. The words felt inadequate, too small for what he'd given her, but they were all she had. The star collector smiled. "Thank yourself, Ellie. These were all your wishes, your light. I just kept them safe until you were ready to remember how bright you are." He stood, offered his hand one last time. "Come, there's one more thing I need to show you. One last piece to make you whole." She took his hand and let him lead her through the constellation forest, past all the empty jars, now scattered like spent candles, past the singing stars and humming moon, to a place where the darkness opened into something new, a door, hanging in space, an old wooden door with peeling white paint and a brass handle worn smooth by countless hands. "Do you know this door?" the star collector asked. She did. Of course she did. It was the door to her childhood bedroom, the room she'd left behind when her family moved when she was 12, the room she dreamed about for years afterward, wishing she could go back just one more time. "Beyond this door," the star collector said softly, "is the last wish I'm giving you tonight. The wish you've made 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. The wish to go home, not to a place places change, disappear, but to the feeling of home, to the part of yourself that knows how to rest, how to dream, how to believe in magic." He put his hand on the door handle but didn't turn it yet. "When you walk through this door, you'll be back in your lighthouse, in your bed. The night will be ending, and morning will be coming soon. But you'll be different. You'll be full again. And you'll always remember that the stars are singing your name." Alara nodded, unable to speak. Her throat was too tight with emotion. "One last thing," the star collector said. He reached up and touched her face, gentle as a father blessing a child. "You are so loved, Ellie, by me, by the stars, by everyone who has ever known your name. And tomorrow when you wake up, you get to carry that love with you. You get to be the girl who hears constellations, the woman who knows magic is real, the keeper of light who reminds other tired souls that they're not alone." He pulled something from his coat, the velvet midnight cloak she'd seen him wearing. He wrapped it around her shoulders, and it settled over her with a weight that felt exactly like forgiveness, like permission to rest, like the universe itself tucking her into bed. "This is yours now," he said, "woven from the quiet between heartbeats. It will keep you warm on the coldest nights. It will remind you that darkness isn't empty, it's full of stars." The cloak was impossibly soft, impossibly warm. It smelled like night air and distant wood smoke and safety. "Are you ready?" the star collector asked. "Yes," Alara whispered. He smiled, turned the handle, pushed open the door. Warm golden light spilled out the light of early morning, soft and new. Elara could see her bedroom beyond, her bed with its quilts, her window overlooking the sea, the lighthouse lamp still turning faithfully above. "Sleep now, my brave heart," the star collector said. "The stars are keeping watch, and they know exactly who you are." Elara stepped through the door, and as she crossed the threshold, she heard them, all of them. Every star, every constellation, the moon, the fireflies, her grandmother's ghost, every wish she'd ever made. They were singing her to sleep, singing her name, singing the lullaby that had been written just for her before the universe was born. She fell gently, safely into her bed, the velvet cloak wrapped around her like a cocoon. The firefly from her shoulder landed on her pillow, pulsing gently. The strand of comet dust hair glowed softly against her cheek. The star collector stood in her doorway for a moment, silhouetted against the constellation forest behind him. His lantern glowed warm and steady. "Good night, Ellie," he said softly. "The lantern burns all night for you." And then he was gone, and the door closed with a soft click, and Elara was alone, but not alone at all. The stars were still singing. She could hear them through the window, through the walls, through her very bones. They were singing her name, just like they always had, just like they always would. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Elara fell asleep feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling loved. The star in her chest burned gently. The cloak held her warm. The firefly pulsed 3 soft beats. "I see you, I see you, I see you." And outside, the dawn was coming. But it could wait. Tomorrow could wait. Tonight belonged to dreams. Elara woke slowly, the way you wake from dreams that feel more real than waking ever could. The morning light was soft through her window, pale gold and gentle, the kind of light that asks nothing of you. She lay still for a long moment, eyes closed, feeling the weight of quilts over her body, the cool morning air on her face, the distant sound of waves against rocks. And then she remembered. Her eyes opened. She was in her bed, in her lighthouse bedroom, the familiar slanted ceiling above her, water-stained and comforting, the window to her right showing the gray-gold sea. Everything exactly as it should be, except the cloak. Elara sat up slowly, and the velvet midnight cloak slipped from her shoulders, pooling in her lap. It was real, solid, beautiful. The fabric caught the morning light and seemed to hold it, glowing softly from within. She touched it with trembling fingers. Impossibly soft, impossibly warm, smelling of night air and distant stars and safety. It was real. Her hand flew to her hair, searched, found it, the single strand that glowed faintly even in daylight, woven with comet dust and starlight. She pulled it forward, watched it shimmer between her fingers. Proof, evidence. The universe had touched her, and this was the mark it left behind. And then, then she pressed her hand to her chest. There, burning steady and warm beneath her ribs, the star collector's gift. It pulsed gently, in rhythm, with her heartbeat, a second heart made of light. She could feel it radiating warmth through her whole body, filling spaces that had been cold and hollow for so long. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, actually smiling, a real smile that came from somewhere deep and true and newly healed. It had been real, all of it, the wishes collected, the grandmother's goodbye, the moon's lullaby, the universe leaning close and saying, "I see you, I love you, you matter." It had all been real, Alara stood on shaking legs, the cloak still wrapped around her shoulders. She moved to the window, pressed her forehead against the cool glass the way she used to as a child, and looked up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the eastern horizon in shades of pink and gold. The stars were fading, as stars do in daylight. But she could still feel them, still hear them, faint but unmistakable, a humming in the air, a frequency just below hearing that her bones recognized. They were singing her name. You feel the weight lift from your shoulders now, don't you? She did. The smooth stone of grief that had lived in her chest for years, it was gone. In its place, the star burned warm and steady, and around it, her heart felt lighter, younger, like she'd been carrying weights she didn't even know about, and someone had gently removed them while she slept. Ilara pressed her palm flat against the window and whispered, thank you. The stars pulsed brighter for just a moment, though the sun was rising, and they should have been invisible. They heard her. They answered. They always would. She spent the morning in a kind of daze, moving through her lighthouse like a ghost, but the good kind of ghost, the kind that's finally come home after being lost for too long. She made tea. Chamomile with honey, the steam rising in gentle spirals. She wrapped herself in the velvet cloak and sat in her chair by the window, hands cupping the warm mug, and just breathed. The world looked different, or she looked at it differently. Hard to say which. The sea wasn't just gray water anymore. It was 1,000 shades of pearl and silver, each wave catching light in its own particular way. The rocks weren't just rocks. They were ancient, patient, holding memories of every tide that had ever touched them. The gulls crying overhead weren't just noise. They were a song, each bird singing its own part of a larger harmony she'd been deaf to for years. The world had always been this beautiful. She'd just forgotten how to see it. That ache behind your ribs? It's allowed to soften tonight. The ache was softening, had softened, was becoming something else entirely, not an absence of pain, but a presence of peace. She could feel it settling into her bones, warm as the star in her chest, gentle as the cloak around her shoulders. She thought about the star collector, wondered where he was now, whose wishes he was collecting, whose tired soul he was healing. She hoped he really knew what he'd given her. He'd given her back herself, the part she thought she'd lost forever. The part that believed in magic and heard stars singing and knew, with bone-deep certainty, that she was loved. The firefly from last night she'd almost forgotten. She looked around the room, searching, and there, on the windowsill, glowing faintly in the morning light, the firefly sat, its abdomen pulsing, slow and steady. 3 beats. Always 3 beats. I see you. I see you. I see you. Elara smiled, walked over, held out her hand. The firefly crawled onto her palm, its tiny feet tickling her skin, and pulsed warm against her lifeline. You're staying? She whispered. 3 pulses. Yes. She laughed, a small, surprised, watery sound that made the star in her chest burn brighter. She had a firefly familiar now, a piece of the night of forgotten wishes that had chosen to stay, proof that magic didn't end when you woke up. As the morning turned to afternoon, Ilara found herself climbing the spiral stairs to the lantern room. Not because she needed to, the great light was already off, waiting for dusk, but because she wanted to, because something was pulling her up and up toward the light. She emerged into the circular glass room, surrounded by windows on all sides, and the view stole her breath. The sea stretched endlessly in every direction, and above it, the sky was so blue it hurt to look at. And there, faint but visible even in daylight, she could see them. The stars, not with her eyes. She couldn't see them with her eyes, not in full sun, but she could feel them. They were always there, always burning, always singing. Day just made them harder to hear. But now that she'd been reminded how to listen, they were unmistakable. Orion, still hunting even though he was invisible. The Pleiades, still huddling in their sisterhood. Cassiopeia, regal on her throne. And all the others, all the countless others, singing their quiet songs to a universe that needed light. Ilara stood in the center of the lantern room, the velvet cloak spreading around her like wings, and tilted her face up. "I can hear you," she said aloud. "I can hear you again." And the stars sang louder, just for her, just for this moment. They sang congratulations and welcome home, and we never stopped singing. You just remembered how to listen. She laughed, cried, did both at once. The relief was overwhelming. The joy was too big for her body. She felt like she might burst with it, like she might explode into light and scatter across the sky and become a constellation herself. But she didn't. She stayed solid, human, held together by skin and bones, and the gentle weight of the velvet cloak, grounded by the star in her chest that pulsed. Stay, stay, stay. You're needed here. Let the tears come if they need to. You're safe here, always. The tears came, rivers of them. But they were clean tears, healing tears, the kind that wash away old hurts and leave you raw but new. She cried for the years she'd spent deaf to the stars. She cried for the loneliness she'd carried like a second skeleton. She cried for the little girl she'd been who pressed her forehead against attic windows and believed the universe loved her. And she cried because that little girl had been right, had always been right. The universe did love her. The stars did sing her name. Magic was real, had always been real, would always be real. She just needed to remember how to be quiet enough to hear it. As evening approached, Ilara lit the great lantern. She did it slowly, reverently, the way you do something that has become sacred. The mechanisms clicked and hummed, the light blazed to life, and the great lens began its slow rotation, sending beams of warning across the darkening sea. She stood beside it, hand resting on the warm glass, and felt complete. This was her purpose, to keep the light burning, to warn the lost ships, to be a beacon in the dark. But now she understood it differently. She wasn't just keeping strangers safe. She was doing what the stars did. She was singing light into darkness. She was reminding the world that even in the deepest night, there were fires that refused to go out. She was a lighthouse keeper, but she was also a star keeper. The star collector had shown her that, had reminded her that light, any light, all light was precious, worth tending, worth protecting. The star in her chest pulsed in agreement. Tomorrow can wait outside the window. Tonight belongs to the child you still are. Tomorrow could wait. Tomorrow, with all its responsibilities and obligations and endless small griefs, could stand outside like a polite guest and wait to be invited in. Tonight was for this, for standing in the light, for feeling the stars hum through the glass, for knowing with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. She was home, not in the lighthouse, though that was home too, but in herself, in the part of her that remembered magic, in the space where wonder lived. That was home, and she could carry it with her now, no matter where she went. The star collector had given her that, had given her back the key to the home she'd been locked out of for so long. Night fell properly. The stars emerged one by one, like shy children peeking out from behind curtains. Ilara watched them appear, and she whispered their names like a prayer. Orion, Pleiades, Cassiopeia, Polaris. Each name felt like a benediction. Each star pulsed brighter when she named it, as if pleased to be recognized. As she climbed down the spiral stairs, the firefly on her shoulder pulsing gently, and made her way to her bedroom. The velvet cloak still wrapped warm around her, the strand of comet dust hair still glowing faint against her cheek, the star in her chest still burning steady. She was so tired. But it was a good tired now, not the exhausted, defeated tired she'd carried for years. This was the tired of someone who'd completed a long journey, who'd found what they were looking for, who could finally rest properly. Alara climbed into bed, pulled the quilts up to her chin. The cloak settled over her like a second blanket, impossibly warm. The firefly flew to her pillow, landing near her ear, pulsing its 3-beat message. I see you, I see you, I see you. She closed her eyes, and immediately she heard them, the stars, singing her to sleep. The same lullaby the moon had hummed, the same melody her grandmother had sung, the same tune that had existed before the universe was born and would exist long after it ended. They were singing for her, just for her, because she was Ellie, who could hear constellations, because she was Alara, who kept the light burning, because she was a tired soul who'd remembered how to dream. You are being held by more hands than you could ever count. Can you feel them? She could feel them. Hundreds of hands, thousands, millions, all made of starlight and love, all holding her up, cradling her, rocking her gently toward sleep. The universe itself had become apparent, tucking her into bed, and she was safe, so safe, safer than she'd ever been. The star in her chest pulsed slower, syncing with her heartbeat as it slowed toward sleep. Thump glow, thump glow, thump glow. Each pulse sent warmth radiating through her body. Her toes relaxed, her fingers uncurled, her jaw softened, her shoulders dropped away from her ears. Every tense muscle remembered how to let go. The cloak grew heavier, warmer, until it felt like being held by loving arms, the kind of arms that would never let her fall, the kind of arms that would hold her all through the night and into morning and forever if she needed. Outside her window, the lighthouse beam turned steadily. Light, dark, light, dark. A rhythm as reliable as breathing, as dependable as the stars singing her name. She was drifting now, floating on the edge of sleep, held up by hands made of light. The lullaby grew softer, gentler, like someone lowering their voice because the baby is almost asleep and you don't want to wake them. The stars hummed, the sea whispered, the firefly pulsed its 3 gentle beats, and somewhere in the space between sleeping and waking, between this world and the constellation forest, Alara heard the star collector's voice one last time. Sleep now, my brave heart. The stars are keeping watch, and they know exactly who you are. She smiled without opening her eyes. Thank you, she whispered into the dark, and the dark whispered back, you're so loved, you're so seen, you're so safe. Sleep now, sleep. And she did. She slept deeper than she'd slept in years, deeper than she thought possible. And in her dreams, in her dreams she walked through the constellation forest again, hand in hand with the star collector, collecting more wishes, gathering more light, becoming brighter and brighter until she was made entirely of stars. But even in the dream, she knew she'd wake up, new morning would come, new life would continue with all its mundane difficulties and quiet sorrows. But she also knew she would never forget this night, would never forget the feeling of being held by the universe, would never stop hearing the stars sing her name. The magic was real. It had always been real. She just had to remember to listen. And now she would listen every night for the rest of her life. The star in her chest would make sure of it. The cloak would remind her. The firefly would pulse its steady message. And the stars would keep singing, always for her. The lighthouse beam turned. Light, dark, light, dark. A rhythm as old as time itself, warning the ships, keeping the lost ones safe, being a beacon in the darkness, just like Ilara, just like every tired soul who remembers, even for a moment, that they are made of starlight, that they matter, that they are loved beyond measure. The lantern burns all night. For you, for everyone who needs to hear that they're not alone, for every soul who forgot how to listen to the stars singing their name. The lantern burns, the stars sing, the universe leans close and whispers, sleep now, you're safe, you're home, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And somewhere in a lighthouse at the edge of the world, or in a bedroom where you're reading this, or in the exact place where you are right now, tired and aching and trying so hard, somewhere the star collector is walking. His lantern swings gently at his side. Glass jars clink softly in his coat. He's looking for tired souls, collecting forgotten wishes, reminding people that magic is real. And maybe, just maybe tonight, he's walking toward you. Listen, do you hear it? The soft tap of footsteps on the path outside, the gentle chime of glass jars meeting, the warm glow approaching through the dark. He's coming, and he's brought your wishes, all of them, every single one. Sleep now, my brave heart. The stars are keeping watch, and they know exactly who you are. The lighthouse beam turns, light, dark, light, dark. The stars sing, the firefly pulses, the cloak holds warm, and the lantern burns all night. For you, always for you, good night.